Welcome our World Media magazine. My name is Dr. George Honora. Ethan Felder is one of our very vocal lawyer activists, always in support of causes for those that are disenfranchised and marginalized in our communities. So it's a pleasure to welcome you to our World Media.
It's a pleasure to be here, George. Thank you for having me, and thank you for all that you do in the community and at our world.
Great, thank you. So, interesting, before the year ends, I wanted for us to sit down and have a conversation about so many things that have transpired, not just about the recent September primary, that a whole thing, a lot of things happened, but other things.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in really, I studied political science in college, and I know you went to Cornell and studied political science, and then went on to law school, business, and at Washington State in Missouri, in St. Louis. So what is it that informs your decision to study political science and law?
Yeah, I mean, when I was at Cornell, at first I started as a pre-med major, but I quickly saw that wasn't for me and I didn't do quite well. So it's, at Cornell when I was there were a lot of weighty, big issues of the day, from the Iraq War, the George W. Bush presidency, where I was drawn to political science and sort of trying to understand how the world works. And at a place like Cornell, there were a lot of high-profile dignitaries and statesmen coming to speak, so there was quite a connectivity between what we were studying and the present day and what was going on in the world. We had presidents of countries coming to speak on campus, candidates for governor, Congress. So I was just drawn to it. It felt important, and I was an activist back then as well. I was president of the College Democrats at Cornell, so I was studying it, and I was also partaking in it and trying to involve fellow students in the cause of social justice.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's really a culmination of a lot of things, your experience and the things going on while you're in school.
With all of these things, it's always a combination of factors that come into play that make you, get you to go into action and try and make things a little bit better.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
So, but curiously, growing up, what kind of environment did you grow up?
Yes.
Because obviously, growing up has things to do with how we become,
Absolutely. It shapes your view of the world. I grew up in a comfortable, upper middle class background right here in Forest Hills, Queens. My parents are still in the house we grew up in, a few blocks away from where we sit right now. And I went to Jewish day school at Solomon Schechter, in keeping with my faith, until 8th grade. And then I went to Townsend Harris High School in Flushing, which is a public school in the most diverse place in the world. And it was quite a formative education I received there. I think it's second to none in the city that Townsend Harris afforded. And had a lot of great experiences there, met a lot of terrific, smart, ambitious people who came from a variety of different backgrounds. And that certainly shaped my thinking and the way I see the world and see people. And from there, I was off to Cornell from there. So, it was quite it was an interesting background, but not entirely unlike a lot of other people here in the world's borough.
Wow, that's nice. So, it said that all politics is local.
Yes.
What is, as a lawyer and an activist at the same time, how do you interpret that? does it have any relevance in how you who you have become
it's
today?
It's very relevant. I mean, I think it's always been relevant since Tip O'Neill, the Speaker of the House, famously said that. And I think it's all the more true today with what we've been doing with this Queen Solidarity Coalition and all these rallies at this point in time, where what's happening at a national level is driving at least a lot of the activism and politics at a local level, at least from what I'm seeing. This is what people care about, what we're seeing on the news every day, this moment in history that's so, dangerous, strange, out of character, I would argue, in the life of this nation. So especially for here in Queens being the most diverse place, and what that means in terms of this, movement of white nationalism that we're seeing, try and exert itself on the national character. So yeah, I think politics is especially local in these times, and especially in the place that we call home. So that's in part why I felt the need to, take my passions about politics, given what's going on right now in the country, and take it to the public square. Yes. By organizing the first Solidarity Unity Rally back in February, where close to 1,000 people descended on McDonald Park in Forest Hills in the heart of the borough. And we had the borough president eventually agreed to come out and address the rally, in addition to the city council speaker. So it's been quite a year. I agree with you. Just as you started your question.
Right, definitely. Wow, that's something. And I won't even venture into the national, because we already know that the recent presidential election was one that took everybody by surprise, and the outcome is still being debated.
Absolutely. And I think it will be for years to come. What this all means, what the 2016 election meant, how legitimate is this president and his victory with all that's being investigated right now, and the revelations that come out every week or every day, it seems. It's quite the times that we live in.
And that reminds me, I think it was Martin Luther King that said that injustice anywhere
is a threat to justice
everywhere, right?
That's right.
And as an activist, I know for you to fight for the underrepresented, marginalized, voiceless, you have to have that at the core of you.
You have to have it in your heart.
So
right here.
Yes, and you've looking at your history. We've seen you do so much to fight for many. For instance, in just past September, in Lefrak City here in Queens, there was a movement. Voting was moved out of Lefrak City to PS13 and the School of Arts and Business. Because of that, a lot of people really came out to voice their disapproval. And you were also at the thick of things, trying to help redress the situation.
That's right.
What has happened? What is the story?
So it's quite a story. And the Board of Elections, made a decision to relocate Lefrak City's polling site that serves 25,000 people in Lefrak City, which is a large residential complex of affordable housing, which has mostly minority residents and a high population of elderly and disabled people. And, it really was nothing less than a blatant act of voter suppression, a classic tactic of moving a poll site less than 30 days before this the city council primary and the most hotly contested city council race in the entire city. So you folks were understandably, beyond upset, angry that this was happening in New York City in 2017. And to pour salt on the wound, officialdom the elected officials were mum about it because of the political dynamics going on in the district involving the candidates. So I came to this by happenstance. I was literally walking up Broadway on my lunch break outside of my office, and it just happened to be I saw a little press conference in front of the Board of Elections, and I stopped and I listened, and I live streamed the press conference, being the activist that I am. And then I took some leaflets and ended up emailing the contact person. And next thing you know, they reached out to me that they need a lawyer. Lefrak needs a lawyer. And, like you say, a threat to an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And it was pretty clear to me that what was going on was wrong. There was no community input involved in the decision. It seemed nothing less than arbitrary, capricious at best. If not that, then it was a deliberate and nefarious attempt to disenfranchise voters. And the Board of Elections tilting its thumb on the scale in favor of one of the candidates in that city council race. Regardless of what you think of the candidates, just that very act is fundamentally wrong in a democracy, where the people are supposed to be choosing their representatives, not the government or some out-of-touch board telling the people by making it hard to vote which candidate they ought to be choosing. So, I agreed to be the lawyer, and we tried to settle the case. The Department of Justice was involved in trying to get the city to come to its senses, the Board of Elections. But that was unsuccessful, and we brought litigation. The litigation, unfortunately, did not succeed for the primary, and there were people that were unable to vote, because it's a mile away. And not just a mile away, but up Horace Harding Expressway next to the LIE.
Yes.
So under the pretext of the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Board of Elections made it that much harder for the elderly and disabled to vote by switching the poll site. Made no sense at all. After the primary, the site was resurveyed by an expert of the Board of Elections, who determined that the original location at Lefrak City in the Continental Room was perfectly ADA accessible. And still, after that, the Board of Elections was insistent on not restoring the poll site to Lefrak City for the general election in November. At that point, the trial court, the judge, had enough with the city, and we got a decision and an order that the Board of Elections should move the poll site back to the Continental Room in Lefrak City. Even then, the board was resistant and said no, and decided to appeal the case to the second department, the appellate court. After they were ordered to by the trial court, after their own surveyor, their own expert said that there's no problem with accessibility. And even then, it was an unlikely legal victory at the appellate division, because under the law, you need to beat the government multiple times in order to order the government to do anything, let alone move a poll site back. And the judge, that appellate judge, was so dissuaded by the Board of Elections lawyer that she ordered the board to restore the poll site less than 6 days before the general election, when the Board of Elections and the city law department was arguing that they couldn't get it done logistically. They got it done in the end. They got it done, and the people were able to vote where they rightfully should be able to vote, on site, where they've been voting for the last 50 years. So the long and short of it, over the course of several months, it was a battle against the Board of Elections and really the entire political establishment of the city, which took an attitude of silent, deliberate indifference to the voters of Lefrak City. Regardless of the race, the council the council member candidates for the city council, it was I think a case study in elected officials looking out for short-term political interests as opposed to higher principles.
Is there ever
So I would say it was partially a victory in that, the real vote where it would have mattered was in the primary, but still the rights were vindicated eventually. And it was shown to be an arbitrary, capricious act at best and violation of the law, that the board had violated the law of New York State in what it did. And the course of conduct it undertook over the course of many months. They would not listen to the community leaders, to the advocates. They claimed that they were, they might have been hearing people, but they weren't really listening. They had their own agenda and their own prerogative.
Well, for now, I think things are back to normal, so to speak. But in case laws, is there ever what they call stare decisis?
In New York, I think this is sort of, I'm not an expert, but sort of unprecedented. I mean, poll sites get moved all the time. But under these circumstances, it was clear that it was done illegally, arbitrarily. We brought a case under what's called an Article 78, which says that no government decision can be done arbitrarily, capriciously, or irrationally. Now, the city, the government, the board, can easily say, give the reason. The burden is on the challenger to prove its case. They couldn't have, in the end, they didn't even have a reason to give. That's why I say that the legal victory and the victory for the rights of the voters was unlikely under the law, under the statutes. But in the end, we proved our case, and we exposed that the board had made a decision without any grounds to do so, which really opens up the question of why did it do what it chose to do. And that's exactly what the Justice Department in a meeting with the board asked them, and there really was no honest and forthcoming answer on their part. So,
democracy, after all, is a government whereby everyone should participate. There should be a level playing field for all. Youths, however you are, once you're a citizen, you should be able to participate and whatever candidate, whatever persuasion, you should be allowed to engage or to run for office.
That's right. And everyone has to participate. And what's even more terrible about what happened was that the Board of Elections was using a decision that says that all poll sites need to be ADA accessible, which they themselves fought to the Second Circuit, which is the court below the Supreme Court of the United States. So under the pretext of a decision that they themselves fought, which said that all poll sites need to be accessible, they decided to make it that much more inaccessible for a whole bunch of people. Elderly, disabled, but also people who are not elderly or disabled. When you're told that you've been voting in one spot for many years and now you need to go a mile away to some other location, you very well may not vote. And that's the idea. I mean, that's it. For voter suppression, it's meant to discourage. And moving a poll site like that is exactly what was effectuated. So, I think for me, when I came to the issue on that street on Broadway and saw the press conference and saw Bertha Lewis speaking, it really was an issue of first principles, like you say, of democracy, about an equal playing field, about everyone having the right to vote and to participate. And that no one was doing anything about this at an elected level, at an official level. It really, it struck a chord in me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just digress a little bit. I know you attended a recent town hall meeting where De Blasio
That's right.
was speaking.
That's right.
And that was on December 19th.
That's right.
Or a day before, December 18th. And you attributed with this quote, democracy works when we stand together, not out of affinity for tribe, but for the rights of all who reside in the world's borough. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I think that, right now with what's going on in the country, what we see is tribalism, that people just feeling like, oh, I'm part of my own group, whether it's my group as being white or being Christian or, whatever denomination you will. But that's, and it's sad to say that sort of thinking of tribalism, it exists in this borough. To be frank about it, we have, where people feel like, oh, how is this going to affect me and my group? But that's not what makes Queens the place that it is. This melting pot, this place where 150 languages are spoken, where we are the port of entry for immigrants going back generations. Queens is all about not just diversity, but people living amicably together amidst that diversity. Inclusion, right. Exactly. Like you see, like my neighbors, I see them celebrate Eid. Me, I'm a Jewish American. That's the American story, and that's the story of Queens, that we, live together amicably as neighbors, and yet we come from such different backgrounds, and there's just a beautiful, peaceful mosaic that is this borough. So, that's what I was, saying in that quote, and we don't always live up to that. In this borough, and certainly not right now in the times that we live in for the country. So sort of my way of, just, pointing out that, we should stick to our principles and what we aspire to be, especially in these times. Yeah.
So what do you suggest? How do we make things better, bring about more inclusion, integration, or unity? Because there has to be love,
right?
For us to coexist together.
Right.
What do you suggest?
Yeah, I think there has to be love, like you say. There also has to be justice. The two have to come together, right. Justice and love. You can't just have love. I think it really comes down to civic engagement and people really, feeling the sense that they need to be involved. That's what I felt. That I felt the need to be involved more than I'd ever been before. I never organized a rally. I never even attended a protest before this last January. But just a feeling that these times are different, and you gotta step up. We could be frank. Part of the tribalism, the parochialism that exists not just in the country right now, but in Queens, manifests itself through our political process, which is heavily influenced by a small number of people and a party organization that's not always in touch with the broader community, or the communities that make up our borough. So, I think it comes down to young people that have not always taken an active role in the political process, running for office, attending town hall meetings, organizing rallies, having feeling that sense that we're in this together and that it's a time for active citizenship. Yeah.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many bases to cover, but as we wind down, I'm sure you remember or recall Mr. Jeffrey Rabinowitz.
I sure do.
I think you guys went to school together.
We were business school classmates.
Yeah. I was glancing through a post he made, and he described you as positive, upbeat, helping keep our group motivated and working efficiently.
I like to think with all my activism with this Solidarity Coalition, I've acted in those same ways to the best that I could.
Where do you get those traits that he mentioned?
Is
this something from family background?
I think back from starting at Cornell, frankly, being a student leader in a variety of organizations and having the opportunity to engage people in something that was higher than themselves, and getting people motivated. So I think it started I think as an undergrad. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So, it's really a pleasure, talking to you. I know we will surely come back again to follow up on some of the things.
It's always a pleasure talking to you,
beginning,
George.
but I figured that
we're going to continue this conversation.
And how would you let people know about the things you do, how to reach you?
I'm Ethan Felder. I'm on Facebook. You could also reach me at ethan.felder@gmail.com. That's my email address. I'm always happy to talk, to meet, to grab coffee, and talk about getting involved locally. Because as George so rightfully said, all politics is local.
So having said that, it's really a pleasure to talk to you.
Always a pleasure to talk to you,
on behalf of our World Media Magazine, it's a pleasure to talk with Mr. Ethan Felder. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned. Have a nice day.